Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. A couple of years ago, my husband and I decided that we wanted to go on a bit of a road trip, so we took some time off work to hit the road. The plan was to go from Colorado to South Dakota because we wanted to go see some of the landmarks and parks up there, and his parents had actually moved up there, so we were going to spend a couple of days with them between stops. The problem with my husband and road trips is that he is not the type to understand when he should stop, and he is 100% the type to push himself until he damn near passes out on the road. I've chastised him a dozen of times about this, but he's too stubborn to listen to me. This is actually where the glitch comes into play, him being like that, and the fact that we were going on a road trip. For most of our trip up to South Dakota, we had to drive north through Wyoming. It's a very direct drive up I-25 to US 85, and the trip itself isn't terribly long. However, my husband didn't want to wait until Saturday morning to make the trip. He decided that we needed to head out Friday evening after work. This meant that we would be getting out of the house at around 6 at night and staying on the road until 1 or 2 in the morning, depending on the time we made. I was very much against this, but he was the one driving, so I didn't have much of a say in it. I don't have my license for reasons that aren't worth getting into, so I wasn't going to be able to drive for this trip. We were driving up to Black Hills and making our way through Wyoming when it started getting dark and I could tell that he was getting tired. I told him that we either needed to stop and get caffeine or get a hotel room or something. And after fighting with him for a bit, he agreed that we could stop and get coffee. We stopped, got our drinks, and then headed back onto the road. I was doing fine at this point. My energy drink was working for me, but I could tell that he wasn't feeling it, because I know the look on his face when he gets tired. He starts to get this really weird stonewall stare going. And about the time I noticed this, I look back toward the road and I see what looks like a deer run into the road, and I scream for him to watch out. And this is where things got weird. I yelled for him to watch out, and I swear that I lived through him hitting the deer, through the deer smacking into the car, through him swerving out to the side, and the car going off the road. I have a vivid memory of the crash, the sounds and the smell of the coolant and oil, and the feeling of adrenaline and terror of me sitting in the car when it went upside down. I very distinctly remember looking over at the seat and seeing him unconscious and bloody. I don't know why I have these memories or why they feel so incredibly real, because it never happened. It was like all of this flashed out in my mind at the exact second that I told him to watch out, like I lived through 2 different timelines at once. Or like I was able to experience where things split. In reality, or in this reality, he swerved and slowed down and missed the deer. But elsewhere, he hit the deer and caused a major accident. I know, this may not seem as weird as most glitch in the Matrix stories, as I didn't really live through the events. But the memories of all of this happening were absolutely put into my head somehow. And like I said, I don't feel like I lived through the situation that happened, but I remember every single second of it in agonizing detail. Like, it's really what happened. I don't know in the end what to think of all of this. Maybe I just have a weirdly active imagination all of a sudden, and the experience is one that I made up. But it really doesn't feel like it. This all feels like memories of the other me, the me that went through the accident, and they somehow got downloaded into my brain. I have a bit of a weird story that actually happened to me this last week, and my husband was a witness to the whole thing, mostly because I thought what happened was his doing. It was the middle of the week, and usually around then, my husband and I struggle to decide what to have for dinner. Typically by Thursday, we are ordering pizza because we're both tired and both ready for it to be the weekend. So cooking just isn't something that we think about. The night before this happened, he and I were thinking about what to have for dinner, and he mentioned that he moved chicken from the freezer to the fridge and that he would come up with something in the morning for us to have. I want to note that he did not tell me what he was planning on making. He didn't even hint what he wanted to make. And that morning, he woke up late and had to make a mad dash out the door so he could get to his job on time. Because of this, we didn't get to talk about what to make for dinner at all, and I was guessing that we were going to end up getting pizza or Chinese. Then, I came downstairs and I noticed that on the counter was a can of chili beans and a post-it that said, "Chili." My guess was that he left them out, so I knew that he wanted me to make chili with the chicken, which I had done in the slow cooker several times in the past. I got the slow cooker out, put the chicken in it, the beans, the seasoning, and mix it all up. Then, I set the heat and put the lid on it. And by the time that I got the lid on it, I went to get dressed so that I could get out to work as well. About a minute later, I got a text message from him saying, "Hey, I think we have the stuff to make chicken chili. Would you have enough time to get that set up before you leave?" I was a bit curious about the text, but at the same time, I figured that he may have just sent that to reinforce what he needed me to do. And I responded with, "Yeah, I saw your note. I got it ready." And he responded with, "What note?" We went back and forth for a while, and my husband was adamant that he didn't leave me a note, and he hadn't gotten the beans out because he didn't have the time to do so. When we got home, I tried to find the note that he left, but I couldn't find it. I had left it on the counter when I left, but it was not there when I got home. I tried to tell him that when I got downstairs, there was a can of beans and a note that said chili, that I thought he had left for me. But again, he told me several times that he didn't have time to get anything ready at all, and that when he left, he barely had a minute before he was supposed to clock in. Neither of us had any idea how the beans in the note got there, nor where the hell the note went, but I'm convinced that something was telling me what to make for dinner before my husband had the idea. It was just one of those weird situations that we'll never find an answer for, but oh well, at least the chili was good. I have a story from when I was a kid, and I know most people will look at this story and think, that's not a glitch, or that's nothing important that happened, or even that I was a kid so I don't remember things correctly. To that, I will say that you are wrong. What happened to me was a small and fairly innocuous thing, sure, but it was something that became a core memory because of how strange it was to me at that time and how strange it still is to me. When I was young, around 8 or 9, my parents ended up getting a divorce, and my dad really put a lot of effort into staying a part of my life. I'm not saying that he wasn't part of my life prior to this, but when they split up, he seemed to put more effort into being there, which was fine. Anyways, most weekends, when he would come and pick me up, he would take me to a fishing supply store that we had nearby. We would go there because they had a small restaurant in the store, and they also had a massive aquarium full of all the local freshwater fish. And being young, I absolutely thought that it was the coolest thing ever. So while my father and I were eating our lunch, I would sit and watch the fish swim around while my dad talked to me about school, friends, and literally anything that was going on in my life. Now, there was one day that I remember on the way up there. My dad had told me that he had it on good knowledge that they got several new fish, including several large mouth bass that they were adding to the tank that day. Bass are, to me, really cool fish, so I was freaking excited. We got there as they were adding them to the tank, so we went to go and get our food first. We got our lunch, and I recall that on this day, I was feeling strangely antsy. Back then, I probably thought that it was the excitement of the new fish and just spending the day with my dad. But there was something off about it. I remember telling my dad that I needed to go to the restroom, and I excused myself from the table. And I recall walking by the tank as the employee was adding the fish to the tank. But something about it was off. It took me several moments to really place it, but I can remember the whole thing vividly right now as I write this. Nothing was moving. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. The fish were all completely motionless. The employee that was adding the fish was kneeling and holding the container of water with the fish in it, and they were pouring the water into the large tank, but the water wasn't moving. For what felt like several moments, everything in the store seemed to just completely stop moving and then sit motionless, almost like time had just stopped. I stared at the fish thinking that they would swim up to see what was going on. I stared at the employee thinking that they were going to add the fish any second now. None of it happened while I was staring. It was as if the entire scene in front of me was frozen in time, and I was the only one bearing witness to this weird lockup. And I recall how much that weird feeling of anxiety hit me while I was staring at this situation. I remember feeling like, what is going on? And then immediately being struck with, what I'm seeing shouldn't be happening. I then turned around to look at my dad, and the second I turned, I hear the sound of the water hitting the water in the tank, and life continued as normal. I looked back and things were happening as they were supposed to. Obviously back then, I didn't know what to think of the whole thing. But looking at it now, and having looked into glitch stories and how things are probably a simulation, this almost felt like some kind of flag. Like my brain was a step ahead of the program that was running, and I wasn't supposed to notice it, but I did. It was definitely the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me, and I've never had another experience like it. I have a short and really strange story that happened to me and my best buddy a few years ago. It's one of those things that we can explain to some extent and that we can tell people what happened, but we have no damn clue what actually occurred. On this night, my buddy and I were going to a local baseball game. I won't say the team because it'll give away my hometown, but it's not one that typically performs well. Not that it's relevant. Anyways, We had a good time at the game, and we had quite a few drinks because we were losing. Bad. Despite this, we were not drunk. At least I wasn't drunk. I was definitely a bit tipsy, but I don't drink enough to actually get wasted. However, because we were drinking, we had paid for a hotel room for us to crash for the night before we went to the game. So we had somewhere to go to. We got an Uber to the hotel, but before we went in, my buddy mentioned that he was desperately craving a Reese's. I laughed at him like, "Bro, why didn't we take the Uber to a gas station or something?" And he just shrugged and told me that we needed to go get a Reese's before we went to bed. I, again, was laughing at him, but said screw it and pointed down the way to where there was a convenience store. We went to the store and got our Reese's, and then started back to the hotel. And that's when the glitch happened. We walked out of the convenience store and he stopped to open his candy, and it looked like the sky went from pitch black to as bright as the middle of the day for half a second. It was as if someone had flicked the switch to the sky on for a moment and then immediately flicked it back off. Like it went from black to bright blue and then back to black. It was the weirdest thing, but we just both kind of stood there for a moment and stared at the sky. I'm sure we looked like we were out of our minds just looking up. When it happened, we both completely sobered up, like 100% completely went from a bit tipsy to completely sober. It was super weird and neither of us said anything to the other person, though we knew that we both saw it happen. We just walked back to the hotel and didn't say a single word. The next morning, I tried to bring it up, but he was pretty much just dismissive of it, saying, Yeah, it was weird. And that was it. To the best of my knowledge, the two of us are the only ones that saw it happen, and there's no way to explain it beyond what I said earlier. It was super weird and kind of creepy, but that's about it. Nothing like it ever happened again, and I've only read a few stories that were kind of similar, but not quite the same thing. Though, if anyone has ever had an experience like this, or has a better explanation than the Matrix glitched, then I would love to hear it. I heard a story on your channel recently about a person that found an item in a box that it couldn't have been put in. I think it was a top or something that they found in a sealed box, and it made me remember something that happened to me back when I was young. At that time, I thought it was just a weird thing and then I moved on from it. But now I realize that this was actually a glitch in the Matrix. It actually happened whenever I was 18 and I was moving out of my parents' house and into a dormitory. Because I was 18, I was super strict on how my stuff was packed because it was my stuff and it was pretty much all I had to my name at that time. I kept things in their own boxes. Books, CDs, clothing, everything had its place, and there was a place for everything. I know, it sounds a bit OCD, and maybe it was, but that's just me. Because I had everything in its own place, I packed every single thing that I owned, and neither my mom nor my dad had packed anything in my room, and I made sure of it. One of the boxes I packed was full of things that were on my bedside table, which is where I kept everything I could that was important to me. One of the items in this box was a necklace that my grandmother had given to me. It was a fairly large pendant that was shaped like a sunflower, It was quite literally my prized possession from when I was young, because it was the last thing that my grandma had given to me for my birthday. I know, I'm repeating things to some extent, but this was my prized possession. Nothing I owned was more important than this necklace, and I would never, ever do something with it that would put it somewhere that wasn't easily accessible. So, I know for a fact that I had put it in this box. Because it was a small box, I had it sealed with packing tape and then a strip of duct tape, and I wrote "important" on it in all caps with a black Sharpie. However, when I got to my dorm and started unpacking, the necklace was not in the box. There was no way that it was opened, as it would have been obvious, and the person would have had to have removed the duct tape from the cardboard, cut to remove the packing tape, then removed the necklace, and then retaped it with all the tape. And that's not something that is easily done. And why would you do it in the first place? To add to the weirdness, the necklace was gone for about 3 months. I was incredibly upset about the fact that it disappeared. But then one day, I got a call from my mom telling me that she found it. I was ecstatic, and I asked her where she found it. She then tells me that she found it in the bathroom, in the drawer on the sink where my dad kept his shaving stuff. I have no idea how or why it would have ever been put in the drawer that only my dad would have been in, and he had no idea how it got there either. He never packed anything from my room, and I remember specifically putting the necklace in the box, and the grandmother that gave it to me was his mother, so he knew how important that necklace was to me. So yeah, that's my glitch. I know it's not as weird as some, but it was super freaky to me. I was so upset for those few months, but I'm glad the Matrix decided to give it back to me. I have no idea how it happened or why it happened, but it did. And now, I get to tell this crazy story to people. I was 17, and I was going to be joining the United States Air Force. I was a part of the delayed entry program so I could finish high school. And since I was joining the military after high school, I visited the recruiter's office almost every weekday, as well as most weekends. There were about 10 people in the group that was also part of the program. We did some traveling to military bases, we went bowling, did exercises, and lots of little activities to build a sense of teamwork and camaraderie so that our transition into basic military training, commonly known as boot camp, would be as smooth as possible. Well, I formed a bond with one of the young women that was set to ship out to the same training base a few months after I did. We spent the entire 8-hour shuttle ride each way to the military base and back. I was amazed at how much we had in common. I never had such a connection with someone before, and I started thinking about her more and more often. I saw her a few more times over the year before I shipped out, but we were falling for each other. When our group went bowling, she gave me and a friend a ride since I didn't drive. We had a blast even though I am terrible at bowling. And all that I really remember about that day was that I spent more time talking to her than my buddy that I invited along. Well, after we dropped my friend off, we pulled off into a parking lot with a romantic view, and she declared her emotions for me. I knew that I wanted her, and I wanted her badly. But I had a girlfriend. So, I explained that I had a girlfriend and I wouldn't be an honorable man if I gave into my emotions. And all she told me was that my girlfriend was a lucky girl. Well, after she dropped me off, I never saw her again. Truthfully, I thought about her a lot over the years, so several years ago, I started trying to find her, but I couldn't. I looked at her high school yearbook and her name wasn't in it, so I used every possible spelling of her name that I could find, and still nothing. Not just for the year she was supposed to graduate, but I even looked in the yearbooks for 2 years before when she was supposed to graduate, and I still couldn't find her. I normally can find anything about anyone if I try hard enough. I even found public records showing the home address of a famous singer just because I wanted to see if I could. So I was really confused. I have always had serious mental issues, so that makes me wonder if my mind created her to give me someone to talk to. But since I had a witness, I just couldn't accept that. So I decided to use my resources as a military veteran to try to dig a little deeper. I searched for everyone with her name, which was Airman Ryan from Windsor, California, that entered the Air Force in 2004, and I still found nothing. Even more confused, I thought to myself, maybe that was her first name. Usually in the military, we call each other by our last names. And my research still came up empty. I looked for her first and last name and all possible spellings of Ryan, and I expanded my search to the entire state of California, thinking that maybe she moved, but still zero results. I even went as far as looking for the next 2 years in the military records, and I came up with nothing. By this time, I was and still am very happily married, but I just want to understand what happened. Did the universe just erase this woman from existence? Were we supposed to be together? But after I said no, did the universe erase her? Did she kill herself, but her suicide was kept so quiet that I couldn't find any news about the event? Or, and this thought bothers me, but seems the most likely, was that my mentality so far gone at age 17 that I created a relationship that manifested a person only for her to disappear after I turned down the relationship. If I made her up, other people would have noticed me talking to myself, and the recruiters would have seen that as a major red flag and may have disqualified me before I even left for boot camp. I am mentally ill, and I do have delusions, but my visualization skills are non-existent. I have never been able to visualize, so I don't think I made her up. The only other alternative that I see is that she either died, offed herself, or the universe erased her. I think the depth of sadness that this story brings has been dulled in my heart because of all the other evil, darkness, pain, and crap that has happened in my life. But this story, I have never forgotten. I love my wife and wouldn't ever do anything to change that even if I found her. But it would be nice to have some explanation as to what happened, just so I could finally have peace of mind on this very confusing story. So, if by chance my missing lady is out there, Kaos has been searching for a long time. And here are the top comments for my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.